Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe with episode 21. Where have we been? Trying to get this X-Files thing back on track here with Avatar. What an incredible episode to fall back into after not doing this for a while. Avatar first dropped April the 26th, just a day after my birthday back in 96. Jim Charleston directed. If you don't know that name, you will definitely know his accomplishments. First AD on Rest Stop from 06, you may know that title. But second AD on Hell Night, 81. How about that? Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker, 81. Second AD again, Unseen, 80. And production assist on Tourist Trap from 79. Written by Howard Gordon. It is a story by David Duchovny. And with the purpose, what really drove this particular episode was David's idea. It was to be more of a Walter Skinner-centric episode. Definitely Monster of the Week. But David's idea to give him and Gillian just a bit of a break as we're heading towards the season's end, and to give Walter Skinner more of his own episode. Now, I think David and Gillian ended up being in this episode more than he thought when he kind of was trying to scheme up this idea, but this does work more for Walter and putting more of a spotlight on him and showing how important he is to the ultimate framework of this show. You're still laying a foundation for things that we'll see much later on. To me, say what you will, but the second film, I Want to Believe, I love how it ends. The moments you're left with Skinner and Mulder. And I think, it's moments here in season 3 that are just laying the foundation for those who are in for the long haul. Eventually you're sitting in a theater all these years later and you're seeing that final scene unfold, where Skinner's just holding, Mulder in a way that just really tugs at the emotions. There's a lot of these over the course of the long running show that is, right? So this particular episode, he also would go on, actually, Jim Charleston would go on to do 3 episodes in season 4, all Monster of the Week episodes from what I can see. So four in all, it looks like. Our guests, really, I think there's just sort of like 2 notables, and just in terms of character, Jennifer Hetrick, who plays Sharon Skinner, is the only episode that we see his wife, and really the episode revolves around that, his marriage of I think it's 17 years, we come to find out. I think I wrote this down. So Skinner joins the FBI in 86. Mulder's at the Academy in 86. Thought that was interesting. So Skinner and Sharon would have been married from 79 to March 7th of 96. And that really is how you take the end. It is a bit subjective, but I think we can kind of assume where it's all headed. And then the gray-haired man, always got to have a character with a name sort of like that, right? Morris Panych, something I can't say. Anyways, so this episode, this was really fun. Now, back when I was really in a routine, I would try my best to watch these things a couple times, 2-3 times each. I only watched it one time. And so if it's not all there, then just, forgive me. But this episode is, again, a Walter Skinner-centric episode. We find out quick that him and his wife has served him divorce papers. He doesn't want to sign them, and his lawyer, I guess it's his attorney, is not too thrilled with him. But he decides he's running up against the guy. Actually, he's already hit and gone past slightly the time allotted for him to sign these papers. And he just pushes it off to the next day. Well, things only go from bad to worse from him that night. In fact, he's at a bar, and it looks like he has a little bit of company who comes up and sits next to him, but seems she is just trying to get away from another guy in the bar. Doesn't take long before the two share a conversation that ultimately leads up to his room. Unfortunately, when he wakes up in the morning, she's dead, and quite gruesome at that. Pretty gruesome, actually, when you just consider the act that took place in the middle of the night with a Skinner that probably was drugged, right? So all the focus is on him as a major suspect. Well, Mulder and Scully aren't going to have any of that. So they're quick on the case to try to figure out exactly what happened. Now, this is sort of a multi-layered sort of episode. It's, a few things going on. But it gets to the point where David Mulder actually thinks that maybe there may be some sort of demon succubus at work here. But I want to say Gillian, Scully, she finds out that he has actually been seeing someone for a sleep disorder. He's been having nightmares. And so there's almost like a minor supernatural bent to this a bit. But somebody has it out for him. Clearly somebody has it out for him. And it's actually, the way they carry it out, just as the main antagonist, who is used as a pawn by higher ups to basically get Skinner out of the way in order to hurt or set back the X-Files in a major way. These visions, he's having visions of an old woman dressed in red, and it's played initially as that is the threat, seemingly, but ultimately Mulder suggests that perhaps what she's doing is trying to help him. It's a vision that he first had when he was in Vietnam. We've had this conversation before, earlier it's not this season, earlier. But he tells Mulder, he finally confides to him after half the episode that what some of the things have been going on, and he really isn't putting up much of a fight to defend himself because he really doesn't know how. He has no idea exactly the forces at work everything is just sort of colliding on him in his life at the moment, and he's bewildered. And a lot of the stress is 17 years of marriage is basically being flushed down the toilet, and he can't reconcile with that. He doesn't want to reconcile with that, and yet he doesn't want a healthy marriage. We find out via his Sharon, who ultimately ends up attacked as well, who falls under who's targeted by the antagonist. Thankfully, she doesn't end up dead. She ends up in the hospital pretty messed up, but then again, the blame is cast on Skinner. And just when you think he's going to, have to, answer for these things. And we find out, too, early on when he meets that girl in the bar, we actually find out that she's a prostitute, which he had no idea. And yet, the madame had, who also ends up dead in this episode, pretty thrilling death scene, actually. Seemingly as a jumper, but she's tossed out and falls to her death. So he's really just being framed every step of the way. But these visions that he's having ultimately, and we're never really privy in terms of how these things work out for him. We get a moment when things have sort of all resolved, and we're in the office at the very end, and Mulder is just he just wants something from Skinner. Like, there's a moment towards the end when the forces are all closing in, and it just seems like Skinner shows up out of nowhere and is able to basically defuse the whole thing by killing the main antagonist, who's nothing more than a pawn by more, higher ups, right? There's also a neat scene in here, though, and so we never get an explanation of why, what he was told. We get the scene that leads up to him being told by his wife, although he sees his wife as the old woman in red. It's kind of a good scene. So he's told something, and he's directed and able to basically show up and be the hero at the end, and really save himself, because he's the one who's under the knife, so to speak. But I was just thinking, there was a great scene. The first girl, the girl that ultimately we find out is a prostitute, when Scully is doing the autopsy, she's wrapping things up. She goes to leave the room. She turns off the light, and she turns back, just one last look at the corpse. She notices phosphorescent stuff going on around her mouth, and so that sort of leads, sort of a neat little device to kind of push Scully towards, okay, there's something really more weird here. And it's funny because when they send it to the labs to get tested, seemingly there's nothing there to be tested. So it's kind of a few weird things going on in this episode, but it is a really neat episode where we kind of get to meet or spend more time with Skinner and start to care more about him and his, again, sort of the part he plays in the much larger framework of all the powers that be, all the moving parts in the FBI that are either secretly helping Scully and Mulder, or secretly, not so secretly, trying to be a stumbling block to their efforts at finding out the truth, to whatever it is they're onto, the great conspiracies and all that the government is, into. And so this one does serve to build Skinner's character in a good way. Now, so at the very end, you're with Skinner. Once Mulder and Scully walk out and leave him alone, he reaches into his stash and pulls out his wedding ring. And there's two scenes. There's one where he's with his wife in the hospital, and then there's the final moments with him putting the ring back on. And you sort of get this idea that maybe he's gonna move to reconcile the marriage and save the marriage. Unfortunately, that's just something that the show, I guess, just never saw as important to stay with. So as far as I know, as far as the show is concerned, the marriage is not reconciled, and Sharon never comes up again. So that's interesting. I'm going to keep my eyes, as I, continue to push forward now into what really is just a little bit left of season 3. I think there's only like 3 episodes left. Quagmire's next, and that's fun. The Loch Ness Monster. Big Blue, is it? Oh, I can't. That's a fun one. I think there's only 3 left in this season, though. And then we push on into 4. But I'm going to keep really kind of pay attention to... do they ever bring Sharon up again? Does she ever come up again? Now, you do kind of do a quick search and you just don't really come up with anything. So, and not a lot of trivia on this one. Funny. A lot of times you look at the trivia for the individual episodes and you usually find some good stuff. But I think the greatest little bit of trivia is what I already gave you, and that is Jim Charleston, in terms of what he did as AD and second AD in the early horror films of the early 80s, of recent Rest Stop in 06, his involvement. So that's kind of a neat, bringing that genre to play, and he does a fantastic job on this episode as a director. And I really can't wait to see the 3 episodes that he lays out in season 4. That's going to be fun. He's a good director. He did a good job. And the idea that David sort of kind of schemed this up and pushed for this, wrote the story. Howard Gordon wrote the teleplay. But so this is this is a nice little collaborative effort, I guess, from those who work. And, and I love it when David sort of gets in and gets more involved. Yeah, so Quagmire, that's a fun Monster of the Week one coming up, and that'll be fun too. It's got some great moments in there. But this one is surprising, not surprising that way, but surprising in the sense that we just kind of get a little bit more of our own Skinner episode, which is really cool. So, by the way, Christmas time, I put together my very first, with the help of my younger boys, put together my very first Lego set. So check it out. The Throne Room, Return of the Jedi. Yeah, did this the other day with a snow day here. So, with no work, put this together all day. So, yeah, pretty cool. Tomorrow, Sunday, we got the Bills' first playoff game against Denver, so looking forward to that. So, as always, I'd like to think we'll push forward with the X-Files, finish out this season, and get psyched up for season 4. In terms of The Walking Dead, if any of you have been following me on that one, probably not going to do one this weekend, but I am more and more looking at maybe jumping back into that one again too as well. But for now, I got my second video in terms of looking at Synapse. That'll be following around the same time as this one. The short, small little collection of Synapse films that I have in my collection, talk physical media stuff. So, kind of do some fun stuff that I think are fun before I really wade in heavy. The X-Files, though, I really do need, because I've already done so much. I really need to just get back. So, for those of you who click on, appreciate it, support. Hit that like button. If you haven't sub please. I do got tons, really do got a lot of stuff down in the archive, so to speak. Some good stuff there, I think. So, but appreciate it. And as always, go Bills.
This is not a dream. Not a dream.
We might be useful to you.